The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
We've got Mike Zullo. We've lassoed him from out in Arizona. We're going to bring him on here in just a moment. But, folks, listen, we welcome our audience, and I know a lot of you have been looking forward to this show today because it's been announced all over the PNN News and Ministry Network that Mike Zullo would be on in this first segment. And, of course, most of you know he is the lead investigator in the Sheriff Arpaio Obama fraud case. And many of you know that there is a headline news story at WND.com. It has been up, I think, since last night, and it is still headline news today. And the title of that is Universe-Shattering Information on Obama Eligibility Delayed. And then underneath, the subtitle is Arpaio Investigator Zullo Maintains Birth Certificate is Fake. And then there's a long story about that. Now, we're going to ask Mike Zullo about that story and the interview he gave and some of the things that he said and kind of where the investigation is, and you'll hear it from his own mouth. Now, let me say to our audience, we're not going to take live phone calls during this segment. Our show is not caller-driven anyway. From time to time, we open up the phone lines. But today, if you would like to ask questions or interject, there are two ways that you can do it. Really, there are three ways, so listen carefully. One of them is you can call the station, 850-623-1330. Talk to Joey Wallace, the producer. If you have a one-sentence comment or one-sentence question, you can give it to him. He can get it up on the Jumbotron, and if I can get to it, I will, okay? I mean, that's my promise. And there's a big if, because Mike and I are going to get into a lot of detailed conversation here. But that's one way. Another way is you can email us at freedomfriday@netzero.com, freedomfriday@netzero.com. And we monitor that live during the show. Again, one sentence. If you write a book or if you're cussing and vile, and we're just going to delete it. But if you have a question, a sane, question, or a comment, write one sentence at freedomfriday@netzero.com. Another way you can do it is right now go to Facebook, and you can stay in tune with us live at facebook.com/freedomfriday.carlgallops, freedomfriday.carlgallops, and you'll see there. And I don't think we allow you to post posts and pictures, but you can go under the topmost post and under the comment section and put your questions and comments there. We'll see them live. So there's three ways you can interact with us. Now, I'm going to bring Mike Zullo on, and I'm going to get him to explain this interview in the story, and the headline says the universe-shattering info has been delayed. I'm going to get him to explain it. You hear it out of his mouth, not mine. But before we do, I want to address one thing. I've had people, writing on the blogs and sending me stuff saying, well, now, this article sounds like Mike Zullo just might not reveal the information. Well, that's not what he said, and I'll let Mike tell you that. But I've had people say, now, if he doesn't, you promised that you would. You said if Zullo didn't reveal it, you would. I never said that. Now, I know people right now are screaming, saying, yes, you did, you liar. I never said that. What I said was, and those of you that listen a lot, you will remember that this is what I said. I said, if I ever discover that Mike Zullo or Sheriff Arpaio are blowing smoke up my ear, I will tell everything I know, because I will not allow somebody to use me. I will not be lied to, and my integrity means everything to me. And so that was what I have been saying. And so far, Mike Zullo and Sheriff Arpaio, to the best of my knowledge, and they've kept me abreast, not of every detail, but of enough that I know in my heart that they are not lying to me about what they're doing and where they're going with this. So, secondly, I have said that when all is said and done, if this doesn't see the light of day in any kind of a formal investigation by Congress, etc., when the information is released, that I would then tell what I know and what I can, and that is those are around legal boundaries. I'm not going to say something that's going to get somebody hurt or killed or somebody put in jail, but I will tell what I know and what I can if that day ever arrives. But I'm telling you, if that day ever arrives, Mike Zullo is going to beat me to it, I imagine, because I don't think Mike Zullo is going to sit on it forever, even if it can't come to some formal conclusion. I believe Mike Zullo will probably tell it as well. Mike, am I right about that? Hasn't that kind of been your heart all along?
Yes, Carl, and if people go back a couple of years ago, I believe that's what we said together on the radio, that even if nothing came of it at that point in time when I believed it was all said and done, we would together divulge everything that we've ever discussed.
Right, right. So, I mean, folks, that's the truth. I mean, people can say what they want. They can twist my words. They can twist Mike Zullo's words. They can put words in our mouth. They can claim I said I would tell everything if Mike didn't, but I never said that. I said if I find out Mike Zullo's been lying to me and, quote, using me, then I would tell everything I know because I'm not going to allow Mike or anybody else to burn me down like that. But Mike and I have since become friends over these years. I've grown to trust him and Sheriff Arpaio. They've kept me in enough of the information to know where they're going and that they're not lying, and there is an ongoing criminal investigation even at this point. Is that right, Mike?
Yes, there most certainly is.
Okay. Well, listen, why don't you just talk about the article for a few moments? And I have a lot of things I want to ask you, and we might get some live questions in as well. But this headline WND article, Universe-Shattering Info on Obama Eligibility Delayed. Explain what you mean by that, what you said in the article, and what you meant by what you said.
Well, the article came about, I believe Sheriff Arpaio did a radio interview with Aaron Klein and made some comments about the birth certificate. And I only suspect with the now entrance of Donald Trump, still maintaining and holding his position, that there's some life has been breathed back into this, if for lack of a better way to put it. Right. And, they reached out. WND reached out, wanted to know where we were. And, it's very difficult, Carl. I came to a conclusion at the end of the first press conference, and a little, while after that, we still, maintained a relationship on the radio, and I was doing my best to let people know that we weren't finished. But there came a point where I had a discussion with Sheriff Arpaio, and I told him that I believed there's something else here, that there's another way to get to this. And there were complications, in the beginning. I mean, people have to understand. It was very unorthodox to conduct any kind of investigation that had, for lack of a better way to create the word picture, already played out itself on the internet, right, over and over and over again. Right. And that's not really the way you do these things, but there were exceptions made in this, and that's not to discredit the prior information on any level, but there were also opposing forces out there that have done their best to conflate issues and take away from it and challenge it with nothing more than doubt and throwing anything against the wall that would stick. Right. And based on the contacts that I've had, my experience in Hawaii, I went back to the sheriff and said, Sheriff, there is something else, and I think there's another way I can get to this, a way that hasn't been done before. Mm-hmm. And that's where we've been going. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's the current investigation, to date. I'm not going to get into any of that. Right. I think you'll relate to this from your prior law enforcement experiences. Secrecy is a cop's best friend. Right. And you want to maintain that level, play everything close to the vest. So I'm not going to discuss anything like that. Right. No, I understand. Listen, we're getting questions in. Let me go ahead and ask you, and these are salient questions coming from what I can tell, from supporters of what you're doing. One of them says, can you please ask Mike Zullo to be specific about the 3 legal hurdles that he was facing? Yeah, let me address that. I actually do want to address that. I won't go into specifics of the hurdles themselves. Mm-hmm. What I need people to understand is, and you were gracious enough to allow me on the radio program, I think it was a year ago, when I was telling you this thing took a turn, it's getting very dark. And the article, explains a little bit of that. But what people need to understand is this last hurdle is something that came up as this was unfolding. And folks, you have to understand, this involves not only me or the sheriff, it involves other people, right, other legal entanglements that have to be worked out. And it's going to also involve and basically rest on the cooperation and protection of other people. And I'm not talking just physically, I'm talking also about legally. And it involves attorneys. It's one of those things that every nut and bolt has to be tightened down, mm-hmm, because if one thing isn't torqued correctly, the whole thing falls apart. Mm-hmm. And going back when I first, aired that we found something, I thought that was going to happen in a matter of weeks. As a matter of fact, everybody around us did. Right. It's these legal problems started to surface that we did not anticipate. Right. And that's pretty much where we are. Okay. So when I made the statement in the news article that it may never see the light of day, let me clarify for you. Okay. That information may never see the light of day That doesn't mean I don't have an idea of what it is. That doesn't mean I will take it to the grave.
Right.
Just because it doesn't see the light of day, and from my perspective, just means I couldn't bring it into this legal setting.
Okay.
And, people are going to have to understand, I can't divulge what we're working on, where we're at, but for it to have these kind of impediments, it's not something to be taken lightly.
Right. And, and I'm going to get to these other questions because the questions are starting to come in, and they're good questions. But I just want to emphasize that you and I have said many times, in our private conversations, and we're going to say it publicly, people need to understand this is a real, live criminal investigation that is of the highest order. I mean, it goes to the White House and down from there. And it is being conducted by one of the largest sheriff's offices in the United States of America. This is a real, live criminal investigation. It is not tabloid journalism. Even though the Obama bots try to turn it into tabloid journalism, it is not. So when you run into legal hurdles in a criminal investigation, you have to cross those hurdles. You can't just go running willy-nilly to the media or wherever and say, well, this is what we've got, and slap it out there, because the other side would love for you to do that, because then they can shatter it and shoot it down, right?
Well, yes, and not only that, you actually become your own leak, if you will.
Right.
I mean, you can't conduct things like that.
Right.
I mean, just to give you a very quick example, and you'll know this, Carl, from your own investigative experience, I may make a public statement about any kind of case. Doesn't mean I tell you everything.
Right.
And it doesn't mean I give you every particular detail. There's things that you just keep to yourself.
Right.
Because you have to.
Right. No, that's a good point. Listen, I'm going to give you one more question, answer it very quickly, and then we're going to take a break, and we'll come back and continue on. Here's another question from Texas. Public opinion can be a great motivator, Mr. Zullo. Why not show what you have to force Congress or the media to address it? That's a good question. People are asking it. I already know what your answer is, but people need to hear it from your mouth.
Well, Carl, both you and I already went to Congress, and we already know what happened there. That's in the article.
Right.
When you're told by your elective representatives, your lawmakers, that there's nothing we're going to do here, or we're going to be prevented from looking into it, you kind of realize that door is closed. And I went to Washington, D.C. 4 times for this.
Right.
That public opinion.
And by the way, let me just tell the folks, they didn't say there's nothing we're going to do here because you have nothing. Several people said, we see what you have. This is unbelievable. This is huge, but we don't want to deal with it because it might hurt our election chances, or, it might hurt the committee I'm on, or, that's the kind of junk we heard.
And that's exactly what we were told. But that has not deterred the sheriff, and it has not deterred me. We're going to continue this. The truth of this thing matters.
Right.
And people have to realize that. And our goal was never to, quote, impeach the president. Our goal is never to go and find out where this guy was born and where is this event. Our goal was simply looking at this document that we do not believe to be authentic and was proffered to the people of Arizona. Hence, it was proffered to the people across the nation.
Right.
That's our goal.
Right. Right. I got you. Okay. Listen, there's a lot more we want to cover, and we've even got OBOTs writing us now. These idiots, these irrelevant idiots. Unbelievable. Mike, we'll be right back after this time out. Folks, you're listening to Freedom Friday. Mike Zullo's my guest. You don't want to go anywhere.
Now, back to your turn on 1330 WEBY, Northwest Florida's talk radio. The phone lines are open, so call in and join the conversation at 623-1330.
Welcome back to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. Sit down, buckle up, and hang on.
Yeah, all right. We're back. Let's get right back to the phone lines. Mike Zullo, you there?
Yeah, Carl.
Okay, good deal. Well, listen, let me just go to a couple more of these questions. Answer them as quickly as you can, and let's move on because there's a lot of stuff we want to talk about. We might even hold you over to the next segment for a little bit. All right, another one writes in here, are lawyers advising Mike on the legal issues? I know I had lawyers to advise on arrests that I made. What's your answer to that?
Well, that sounds like a knowledgeable police officer. Yes, of course they are.
Yeah. Okay, good. Let me see here. Here's one. How does Dennis Montgomery fit into the universe-shattering information? His name came up in that article and in the federal case against Sheriff Arpaio, Dennis Montgomery. And the question is, how does he fit into the universe-shattering information?
Well, Carl, there are legal proceedings going on where Mr. Montgomery is being affected by, so I can't comment on anything regarding Mr. Montgomery, but I can tell you that Mr. Montgomery has brought a broad base of information.
Okay. And here's another one. Has Mike Zullo submitted to Congress the so-called universe-shattering information?
No, actually, if I ever do that, that's going to happen after I present it to you folks.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, let's move along here. So what you said in that article, and this is important, you said that this investigation kind of took another turn and you kind of started over. Now, that didn't mean you started from scratch, but you had a meeting with the sheriff about going a different direction because of something that you saw and understood. I'm trying to be nebulous here because I don't want to say anything I shouldn't say. I'll let you say what you want to say. But did you start over, so to speak, and why?
Well, Carl, like I said, I alluded to earlier, in the beginning we were having a lot of information forced to us and trying to vet through that information. And I was one that even in the beginning, I didn't do any internet research on this topic. I wasn't even interested in this topic. I wanted to try to do this from my own perspective, and it's very difficult, especially when you have major media outlets trying to give you information. I wanted to do this investigation now the way that we would have done it had it been brought to the sheriff's office, absent of other influences. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I looked at this. It was beneficial to go through the first part of this, but I identified some areas that were extremely concerning, not only in the document itself, but interaction with people that should have interacted with us in a very different way.
Right.
And that gives you reason to raise your suspicion level. And after, deliberating this for a while, I went back to the sheriff and I asked him to give me the authorization to continue, which he did.
Right.
Sheriff Arpaio has never, ever, ever given up on this. And Sheriff Arpaio maintains to this day that it's not real.
Right. The birth certificate's not real. And the investigation is ongoing.
Investigation is certainly ongoing.
Right.
I wouldn't be on the radio
Right.
with you if it wasn't.
Yeah, well, that's the point I was trying to make, is that the reason you're on the radio with me is because Sheriff Arpaio himself was on the radio with Aaron Klein the other day, and he said what you just said, that, look, the birth certificate's not real, and the investigation is ongoing. And then, of course, WorldNet Daily, or WND, they ran a headline article, et cetera, et cetera. My name was mentioned in it. Of course, you were in it. They interviewed you, and so that's why you're on the air today. Hey, by the way, let's take advantage of this point and just, if you don't mind, tell the folks – when this thing took a different turn, you purposely left me out of the loop as far as detailed information. Talk to folks about that, because that's important. I mean, I haven't said that publicly, but there's a reason for that.
Well, Carl, it wasn't so much when it kind of took a different little turn. It started to happen when it started to, and I'm just going to leave it at this, is getting darker.
Right.
At that point, and again, you'll know this, and some of your listeners that were former investigators are going to know this, there's things that you don't discuss with people, not only for secrecy reasons of conducting an investigation, but you don't want to put someone else in a position of having any knowledge that they shouldn't have.
Right.
And that's the reason. I mean, if you guys look at it, I've stayed off this radio for a very, very long time.
Right.
And people are pounding tables, and I get it. Pounding tables, wanting something done. Did you, turn your back on us? No, let me tell you something. That's far from it. And I think if you've been following anything going on with the sheriff, you could see that my participation in other things are now involved.
Right.
So it's not purposeful in a sense to leave people in the dark because I'm choosing to. It's what's necessitated.
Right.
In going forward. It has to be done this way.
Right. Okay. Well, and that's just important because you and I have become friends over the years, and, we've traveled together, and we've gone to Congress together, and we've eaten meals together, and we've had personal conversations about all this together by phone and in person. And I know there are people out there that think I know every little detail of this investigation. Number one, folks, at this point, I'm a pastor and an author and a media personality. I'm a reporter in this case, if you will, but a good friend of Mike Zullo. But I'm not a criminal investigator anymore. I'm not in law enforcement in that respect anymore. So people have written me and said, make Mike Zullo do this. Tell Arpaio. I can't make Mike and Sheriff Arpaio do anything, folks. They don't tell me all the little details. And so that's important for folks to know. Mike, can you stay on for a few moments of the next segment? Because we've got a hard break coming up in just about 30 seconds. Can you stay on for a little bit longer?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good, because there's several more very important things we need to talk to you about and ask you, and I'm sure there'll be more people that'll be writing in on freedomfriday.carlgallops at Facebook, as well as Freedom Friday at Net Zero. And so, anyway, this is enlightening. Mike, thank you so much for spending this time with us.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity, Carl.
Absolutely. We'll be right back in just a moment. Folks, you're listening to Freedom Friday. Carl Gallops, Mike Zullo, my guest. We're going to hold him over for a few moments. You don't want to miss this.
Now, back to your turn on 1330 WEBY, Northwest Florida's talk radio. The phone lines are open, so call in and join the conversation at 623-1330.
Repeat after me. Barack Obama was born in the United States of America. One more time. Repeat after me. Barack Obama was born in the United States of America. And even if he was not, there is nothing you can do. If you say anything, you are a racist. This has been a friendly reminder from your official government brainwashing service. Atlas has now shrugged.
All right. Welcome back, folks. I love that one. I love that one. Yeah, and even if you don't, you are a racist. Well, folks, listen, let's get right back to the phone line because Mike Zullo is my guest this afternoon. So, Mike, listen, the questions are just pouring in. I don't know if I can keep up with them. Don't know if I can get to all of them. A lot of them are really good. Let me ask you, here's one. Let me see here. How about this one? Does Sheriff Arpaio and Deputy Chief Sheridan, that's of the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, saying that the Montgomery information was, quote, junk, does that diminish his value? Mike, you there?
I can't. Can you hear me, Carl?
Yes, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. I cannot get into anything that's related to that litigation. However, the only thing I do want you to understand is a lot of times in law enforcement circles, information that we may not have been able to corroborate is often referred to as junk information.
Right.
That doesn't mean what you folks think it means. And there wasn't really ample time for the sheriff and the chief deputy to come up to speed on what was progressing on this front. They were caught, for all intents and purposes, Sheriff Arpaio was caught cold. Right. So I can't really discuss much more on that.
Right. Okay. Well, that's a fair answer. I mean, I know there are things we're going to ask these questions that people are asking, and I know there are things that you just can't answer. And thank you for being honest about it. Here's another one. Will you guys continue the investigation even after Obama leaves office? If you don't get it done before he leaves office, will you continue?
I will tell you, most likely, I would. I think that this is the kind of situation and occurrence that should never, ever happen again. And I think it's never too late to find the truth. Yeah. And a lot of times you find the truth later on, but it has a far-reaching effect when you start to turn back the clock.
Right. I think of the Kennedy assassination. I think of Nazi Germany. I think of things, atrocities that happened that are still going on in investigation. And truth is truth, and truth always matters, especially truth that deals with something that monumental. And this is, I don't know if you compare it to either of those two things, but it's monumental.
It is. And Carl, you know what? I mean, the sheriff has said it himself. We're not in a race against the clock, and it's not that we're slow rolling this. Right. Because if I could get every duck in a row, I would be out there tomorrow. Right. We're just doing it in a methodical fashion, something that is going to be very difficult to refute later on. Right.
Right. I got you. All right. Here's some other questions. Here's one. Says, did Mike Zullo ever contact Donald Trump? Because Sheriff Joe says he has Donald's back.
No, I have never spoken to Mr. Trump. I understand that. I do recall Mr. Trump sending the sheriff a handwritten congratulatory note after the first press conference. I know those two talk. I don't have any direct knowledge of that, though.
Yeah. Okay. Here's one. You'll appreciate this. I'm not sure. These are coming from all over the nation, Mike, but this one says, "Thank you so much for everything you're doing!" ! Question to Lieutenant Zullo. Will you be at the rally with Mr. Trump and Sheriff Arpaio on Saturday? With WND and today's interview and now the rally, it seems like we're so close. Any chance that there will be news on Saturday? God bless you. Be strong. And then he signs his name.
No, there is not going to be any news released there, and I am going to stay far, far away from there.
Right. Okay. All right, here's another one. Is the need for obtaining proof through another means needing to start over, is that due to the death of Loretta Fuddy or due to the need of protecting any other whistleblower? Those are things we've talked about in the past, but you might want to answer that one.
I can just tell you it doesn't have anything to do with Loretta Fuddy. She came way after. I mean, this decision to pursue this in a different matter happened well in advance of that.
Right. Here's one. How did Larry Klayman get involved in all of this? First, tell the audience who Larry Klayman is for those that don't know, and then if you want to answer that, how did Larry Klayman get involved?
Larry Klayman is the founder of Freedom Watch, a very talented attorney. I can't go into particulars on how he got involved, but I would like to say one thing. I've come to know Larry now over 3 years, and one thing I can tell you about Larry Klayman is a patriot. Mm-hmm. Some people breathe patriotism. Larry Klayman bleeds patriotism. Yeah. He loves this country, and he goes and he takes a lot of hits for trying to do the things that are right. Right. It's going to be a fascinating story when it finally does come out how he became involved.
Right. Okay. Listen, let's take a few moments. Mike, is there anything that you we've been answering questions here, but let's just stop and take a breather. Is there anything that you just want to get off your chest, you want to say? Anything you want to make clear about all of this? Anything that you really want to make sure that people are really understanding that you think that they might not be understanding?
I really want them to understand that we haven't stopped. I also want to address a couple things. Every once in a while my email box will get, flooded with people that are frustrated. And I don't want to sound crass in saying this, but the reality is if people think this is a waste of time, then please don't watch me waste my time.
Right.
Go find some other cause, something else to monitor and talk about, because I could assure you as the sun rises tomorrow, this is going to go on with or without you.
Yeah.
If this is too much for you to bear, please just move on. You're not hurting my feelings. It doesn't matter because it's going to come to fruition with or without people watching it.
Right.
And I've done everything I could humanly possible to make this happen in a timely fashion. But there are other things involved now, and that's just making it that much more difficult.
Right. Well, listen, I want to go back to the WND article, Mike, because there's a statement in here, 2 sentences that seem to be very disturbing to people. You've already addressed this here today in the very beginning of this interview, but that's been 45 minutes ago, and our attention span is not 45 minutes long. And plus there are people tuning in now, that weren't listening when you first addressed this. In the WorldNet Daily article, the WND article, you're quoted as saying, quote, "We've cleared 2 legal hurdles, and the last one is problematic." Quote, "If we can't clear it, it may preclude this information from ever reaching the light of day. It may prevent me from ever disclosing what this is, but it does not mean that we are not cultivating new evidence." Okay, now, Mike, so you're basically saying we're still going forward, but there is a chance if we can't clear this hurdle, and what you're quoted as saying is, it may prevent us from this information ever reaching the light of day. Now, that's what you said. That's what's in the article. But there's a context to that, and you explained that context in the beginning of this interview. Could you address that again? Because people are still kind of keying in on that, thinking, well, oh, my God, Zullo said it's never coming forward.
Yeah, and the context is, in my thought process, when I'm asked anything regarding this, I am thinking of the investigatory sense, the legal sense, what we would be able to release, what we couldn't release. Mm-hmm. And in that genre, if we don't have what we need to be able to do that, like I will not go before the public and release something that I think or I believe. It's only what I can prove. Mm-hmm. At that point in time, it would never see the light of day. Now, that doesn't mean I won't discuss later on perhaps what it was, right, or give people a good idea of what happened without disclosing what it is. I mean, it's a very touchy subject.
Right.
And I have every intention of answering every question when this thing is over.
Right. Okay.
I mean, there's no solace in me of being the only guy walking around with this in my head.
Yeah, right. Well, and I like these guys that post and say, well, he's just been leading us astray. And my question to that is, to what end?
For what, Carl?
For what? Why would Mike Zullo lead the nation astray on something that has consumed your life and family time and years of your life and even into your own finances at times? I mean, to what end would you be leading America astray?
That one really takes me, because that would be like suicide by cop. I might as well just get somebody to shoot me.
Right.
Why would I do that?
Right.
Why in God's name would I do that? Right. There's no benefit to me to do that whatsoever.
Right. I understand that, and I'm glad that they heard that from your mouth. Here's another question, Mike. Why does it matter now, this investigation, since it looks like Obama's going to serve out his full term? I think we've already answered that, but that's still a good question, and people need to hear you answer that.
Because it's a pursuit of the truth. It's getting to the truth of what happened here.
Yeah.
And how something like this could have happened here, and what can we do to make sure it never happens again? Look, he may not be a Republican. He's a Democrat. If this was a Republican, I'd still be doing this.
Right.
I just don't want this kind of deception on any level from the highest office in the nation.
Right.
I just don't. And if you look circumstantially at everything that's unfolded here, I mean, you have to almost be blind or really drunk on the Kool-Aid to think all this is normal, because it's far from it. Right.
No, I'm with you. All right, here's another one, and I think I know how you're going to answer this or have to answer it, but I'll ask it because a writer wrote in and a poster wrote in. They want to know how did Dennis Montgomery become involved with you? How were you introduced to Dennis Montgomery?
I cannot answer that question.
I knew that was going to be your answer, but I wanted to go ahead and ask you.
That's a setup question. I got to tell you.
I know it is, but that's in fact never mind.
I think I know the reporter that just put that question over to you.
Yeah, and I'll talk to you about it off the air. I think I do too. But there it is. I mean, it's right here. So I thought I'd ask you. I knew you'd get a kick out of it. Well, listen, I tell you what, Mike, can you stay for a few more moments after we take a break? Can you?
Sure.
Okay, good. We're going to take a time out. When we come back, I'm going to ask Mike about how the sheriff is involved with Donald Trump and the immigration issue and the lawsuit against him and the birth certificate, how that became a part of all of that mess. So we'll let Mike Zullo unpack that for you when we come back. Folks, you're listening live, 1330 WEBY, Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. And aren't you glad you're listening? Because you see, you're not going to hear this anywhere in the media today. You'll see it on WND headlines. You'll hear it on Freedom Friday, but you're not going to hear it on Fox News, probably. But that's why you listen, isn't it? Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Aren't you glad that you patiently waited? Carl is back. He is in the Oval Office of Gulf Coast Talk Radio, and you are with him. Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups.
All right. Welcome back, America. And welcome back, Mike Zullo. Are you still with us?
I'm still here, Carl.
Okay, good. Folks, you're listening to Freedom Friday. Carl Gallups, Joey Wallace, your world-famous producer, Mike Zullo, lead investigator of the Sheriff Arpaio, Maricopa County Sheriff's Office Obama fraud case. He has been on with us since the top of the very first hour and has been gracious to stay over through several segments. Mike, let's get back to some of these questions people are writing in. And, folks, you can write in freedomfriday.carlgallups on Facebook, or you can write in at freedomfriday@netzero.com. And I can't promise I'll get to every one because they're just flooding in right now. But, Mike, here's one. It says, Mike, you said before that the so-called Xerox evidence is of no concern, yet it's still out there unchallenged, and even a lot of your supporters have said it seems to refute a lot of your evidence. Is the Xerox evidence the reason you seem to have abandoned much of the original investigation? I know you've done a lot of testing in this area. Why not release the evidence and just refute it?
Well, first off, the Xerox machine was the very piece of information that tipped me off that there's another way to go here.
Yep.
The other thing, I mean, Carl, if those pumper chimps want to keep pumping that Xerox machine, have at it, because it's irrelevant as far as I'm concerned.
Right. And I, and I remember, Mike, and I'm just going to say this, I'm going to let you go on because they want to hear you and not me, but I remember when all of that came up, and I'm not at liberty to go down that whole rabbit trail, but I can remember you saying, oh my gosh, another whole door has just opened here. And they don't even realize what they did. But anyway, that's enough of that. Go ahead.
I know there was a second part to that question. I don't recall.
Yeah,
what it
I'm
is.
so sorry. Let me get back to it here. There it is. Hold on.
Something about releasing it.
Yeah. It's still out there unchallenged. Even a lot of your supporters seem to refute the evidence. Is the Xerox machine the reason you have had to abandon much of the original investigation? Why not release the evidence and just refute
I want to address that. This is not abandoning anything.
Yeah.
This is a different way to do this that's going to take us deeper into this.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's being abandoned. I want to make that really clear.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. All right, here's another one. Can you just release the Reed-Hayes report?
Oh, absolutely, but I won't.
Yeah. Okay. Not at this point anyway, right?
No, Reed-Hayes' information is exactly what I've always portrayed it to be. I am not going to release that until I can put a bow on this whole thing.
Right. And that will be a part of the...
And then, Carl, to be honest with you, again, this is a whole different kind of deal we're doing here.
Yeah.
I may never release the whole document. There's no reason to release it publicly.
Right. You did release it to the Alabama Supreme Court, right?
I believe, no. I don't believe I gave...
Oh,
no,
you referred to it. You referred to it. That's right.
Correct.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, I remember now. Okay. All right. Let me see. Let me keep going here. Here's another question. Is there anything new on the Selective Service record?
No, the Selective Service record, I mean, we all saw what that is. The big obstacle we hit there was, I think it was 3 days after we released our information on it, Selective Service then put out a memorandum saying that they would no longer cooperate with any law enforcement investigation that wasn't a federal investigation.
Right.
Can't go anywhere at that point.
Right. Okay. Well, listen, back to this. Talk to us about the connection between Donald Trump running for president. Right now he's number one in a lot of the polls, and Sheriff Arpaio and the birth certificate and the connection they both have with that, as well as this immigration federal court case with Arpaio. And how does all that tie together? What elucidation can you give us on that?
Well, the only thing I can really tell you on that is, look, it was Mr. Trump that was prodding along for the release of this document, and what we got was something that not even he believes, and I believe that he did some work into it. Sheriff Arpaio has maintained now that it's been a fraudulently created file. That's no surprise. They're both in the same camp on that. Sheriff Arpaio has been leading the charge on immigration to the point that it's got him pretty much where he is right now. And I can't discuss the legal, ramifications there. But I believe that Sheriff Arpaio and Donald Trump see eye to eye on immigration, and I believe that they are of the same opinion of the birth certificate. And I personally, I think the reason why you're seeing Donald Trump score so high in the polls is he is a breath of fresh air to America. And I'm going to go one step further and say I think he's a breath of fresh air to some Democrats as well.
Right.
I mean, you cannot tell me that you don't feel the oppression in the last 7 years.
Right.
And it's time to take care of America. And that's the way the sheriff looks at things.
Right.
The sheriff has always been thinking about America. I'll never forget the words that he told me. Mike, let's get this resolved and let's move the country forward. This is no good.
Right.
That's how the sheriff saw this.
Right. I remember all that. I remember the first interview I did with you several years ago. I mean, that was the first thing you said.
And if you want to talk about somebody that loves this country, go have a cup of coffee with Sheriff Arpaio.
Right. Well, that's so obvious to me and so many others. Listen, Mike, we've only got about 5 minutes. I'm going to let you put a bow on this and just unload anything else you want to make sure that people understand. Thank you for being gracious to stay on. Before you do, though, I want to reiterate something I said in the beginning of this because I know a lot of people have tuned in. For those of you out there who have said, well, now, Carl, if Zullo's not going to release it, you promised us you would. I never made that promise. And I'm going to say this right in front of Mike Zullo, and he can correct me if I'm wrong. What I said was, for several years, especially when I first was getting to know Mike Zullo and just having him on as a guest, I have a lot of guests on this show. What I said was, if I ever discover that Mike Zullo or Sheriff Arpaio are blowing smoke in my ear on this, then I will tell what I know. Now, I am not an idiot. they're in the middle of a criminal investigation. You think I'm going to spill the beans on what they've confided in me about that, which is not everything, but enough? Of course not. I mean, I could go to prison for doing that. People could get hurt doing that. You could blow a criminal investigation. I'm not an idiot. Of course I'm not going to tell if Zullo doesn't tell. But what I said was, if I find out they're lying to me, and I mean this with any guest that I have come on here who claims to be an expert on something, and then I find out later they were just blowing smoke in my ear using me and this platform, of course I will out them. But now, of course, years have gone by. Zullo and I have become very good friends. I know enough to know that he and Arpaio are not lying. This investigation is going on. It is a criminal investigation. And, of course, I'm not going to release any information. That's Mike Zullo and Sheriff Arpaio's job. Did I say that correctly, Mike?
Yeah, you did, Carl. I couldn't have said it any better.
Okay. Go ahead. Put a bow on it. You've got 3 or 4 minutes. Just wrap it up. Anything you want people to know about this.
Well, Carl, the one thing I want to touch on is Sheriff Arpaio has been a champion trying to stop this whole illegal immigration act that's going on here. And personally, on a personal level, last week's heinous homicide of that young woman in San Francisco, that just tore the heart out of me. I can't imagine not only her losing her life, but I can't imagine her father having to be there so helpless, and then finding out the background that's involved with this. And there are others that this has happened to. And the only thing that I could really say, because I don't have the answers, if our elected officials don't want to, step up and cowboy up to this, I don't know where we go. Get on your knees and start praying for this nation, because we are in trouble.
Right.
We are in trouble. We cannot allow ourselves to be little pawns, and that the death of a few don't matter.
Right.
This can never be about what's best for the collective. It needs to be what's best for the individual. Go read the Constitution,
right.
The Bill of Rights. Those are individual rights, not collective rights.
Right. Mike, perfect. You couldn't have said it any better. We've got to go, Mike. I hear the music, but I want to reiterate, Mike, this should be laid at the feet of Congress. It's really not Arpaio's responsibility, nor yours, to rectify this situation. This belongs at the feet of Congress, and Congress and the media have shirked their responsibilities thus far, Mike Zullo.
Well, I agree. You know what? Lay it at the foot of the cross first.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.